Hello everyone and welcome. Sit back, relax, and get comfortable because this is a wonderful time for new stories from Yellow Cat. Write your favorite stories in the comments below and maybe they'll be in our new video. Let's get started. Which examples of cheating the system do you like the most? Okay, this isn't necessarily cheating the system, but more like breaking the system. My father used to work on oil rigs in Alaska. They had several safety meetings going on at the time, and my father was sitting in on one of them. My father was a low-level employee. He was probably the prep cook assistant or something. During this discussion, they were assigning tasks to each of the workers in the event of an emergency. My father was given around 2 pages of instructions on what to do in the event of a shipwide catastrophe, fire, sinking, etc. They were discussing what each participant had to accomplish at the meeting he was attending. They were making certain that everyone understood their roles. My father sat quietly and listened as they went over everyone's obligations. He saw that the CEOs, or the bigwigs, only had 1 to 2 items to accomplish before they could depart. On top of that, each of the bigwigs was equipped with dive equipment for emergency escape. He looked down at the 2 pages of tasks he had to complete and then noticed that all of the other low-ranked people had similarly extensive lists. So, at the end of the meeting, they offer the floor to questions and remarks. My father raises his hand in the air and it eventually reaches him. He stands up when it's his turn to talk. Now, I understand that if there is an emergency, there are a lot of things that need to be taken care of before we can evacuate, he adds. That is something I am aware of. I understand, I really do. But I think it's a little unfair that we low-class workers have all these extra responsibilities if an emergency strikes, while those of you who are in charge only have to do 1 to 2 things, and then you can go and get in your wetsuits and jump into the ocean, he said, holding up his 2 pages of assignments in case of an emergency. So, let me tell you something. What's on my list of responsibilities doesn't matter to me. I don't care. None of that is gonna happen. Do you want to know why? Because if the ship sinks, the first effing thing I'm gonna do is go up to Mike's room, points to one of the bosses, beat him up, and steal his wetsuit. That's how I feel about your list of responsibilities. The audience erupted in applause. The supervisors were irritated, but they also felt threatened. Within a month, they held another safety lecture to distribute new emergency assignments. The labor was divided fairly among all of the employees, with the bosses given several additional responsibilities. My father used to crack the biggest grin when he told that anecdote. This isn't mine, but I was a cashier at a store for about 1.5 years and caught a woman and her father doing this. They'd come in and buy 3 or 4 products, then return them later, claiming they were defective or not what they wanted after all, etc. And because we had an exchange-only policy and you needed a receipt to show purchase, they would choose 3 or 4 other goods instead. Because this was a tiny store with no major inventory issues, we never re-rang the swapped items and simply let them go. However, when the initial items they had purchased were rung up, the receipt that was produced with the transaction did not indicate the individual items, only the total price. It was a clunky register system. So they'd wait for a separate employee to return with the things they'd previously swapped and the receipt from the first transaction before exchanging them again. Basically, they treat the business as if it were their personal closet. They did it approximately 5 times before I caught them and implemented a policy requiring the employee to write on the original receipt, because we can't force the client to let us keep their proof of purchase, that the items had already been swapped. The first time I wrote on her receipt, she pitched a fit. She literally yelled at me, "How are we supposed to bring them back if you write on it?" Once you've been caught, just accept it. Being a bee will not get you what you desire. On a side subject, when I was in high school, I worked at a Big Lots and discovered one day that all the price stickers do not scan the item you're ringing up, but rather the section of the shop it comes from. So, in theory, I've never tried this, you could pull a 95-cent sticker from a bottle of cheap shampoo and slap it on an expensive box of hair dye, and no one would know because they were both in the beauty area. Well, the cashier may technically notice, but most people who work at businesses like Big Lots are either in high school and don't give an F like I was, or they've been there so long they practically want to get fired so they can file for unemployment. I have worked in HR for about 6 years. I have hated every minute of it. Oh, the ways I've seen people cheat the system and how I've cheated it myself. If your company uses a flexible spending account through a vendor and you're given a prepaid card with the allotted funds on the card will have all the funds loaded onto it within your first month, even though the deductions come out of your check over the course of a year. If you're in desperate need of surgery or dental work, find a job at a company that offers this as a benefit. Easier said than done, I know, but you can quit after you've used the FSA, and most employers can't come after you for the money, so you can get medical necessities for free. I have cheated the system by creating my own reimbursement, sending them to an FSA vendor, and getting money back that I never invested. Lie on your time card. Hardly anyone double checks them. If your manager asks you about it, say you entered the wrong time on accident. Play stupid, get paid extra. I've seen it done countless times, and no one's ever been fired for it at the places I've worked. Lie on your resume if you really want a job you're not qualified for, but be ready to perform up to the job description. Say you want a managerial position, but you've only ever held support positions. Keep your title the same because all employers can verify from other employers is your title and dates of employment. They can also legally find out if you are rehire eligible, but they cannot ask why. If an employer gives out this information, you can sue them. The job duties you list on your resume can mimic whatever job you're applying for. Trust me, I've done this countless times as well, and it's always gotten me jobs. If you need time off work or you hate your job, tell your doctor you have depression. Find out what the symptoms of depression are and explain you're suicidal. I'm not trying to belittle or joke about depression here. I've done this because I had depression, so I know it works. Then, have your doctor fill out leave of absence forms indicating you need a reduced work schedule or modified work environment. If you push hard enough, you can get paid short-term disability, which most companies pay about 60% of your income. Do it while you're looking for a job you actually enjoy, or do it while you're a student. What are reasons people don't want to live in an HOA community? There may be some decent HOAs out there, but I haven't come across any of them yet. In the neighborhood where I used to reside, there were a lot of people who were solely concerned with the exterior aspect of their homes. During one particular year, it became out that the neighborhood, which was comprised of linked townhomes, had a problem with termites. When the issue of dealing with the termite infestation was put to a vote by the board, they decided that instead they would repaint the exterior of the residences. The condition got progressively worse, and even though the wood was cracking and wearing away, they continued to repaint it. The problem with the termites had gotten completely out of hand. People were having problems selling their homes, but the HOA did little to help the situation, even though they were aware of it. I left because of this, in addition to other reasons. A few months later, a major horizontal beam collapsed in the garage of one of the board members, bringing down the support structure around it, ripping a massive hole in the walls, and destroying both of his automobiles. Additionally, the incident caused structural damage to the homes that were adjacent to the garage. I'm not really sure what happened, but shortly afterward, when I drove by that location, the entire complex was covered by a tent that looked like a magical circus, either bombing some bugs or cooking up some illegal substances to pay for the well-deserved lawsuits. About 2 miles away from the St. Johns River, my parents relocated to a private community that featured private dirt roads. At one end, the neighborhood is adjacent to the river, while at the other end, it is adjacent to the homes that are located outside of the town center. My parents decided to purchase a property in that area, which is located near to the town center and features other homes that are offered at affordable prices. The homes get increasingly pricey to purchase as one approaches the water's edge. Well, the wealthy people who live near the river didn't like the fact that they had to travel slowly on the dirt roads, since they preferred to utilize those roads to avoid driving on the big roads in town, which might become congested when school is out for the summer. Despite the fact that the ride may appear to be smooth, driving quickly on a dirt road over time develops ribbing and holes that can seriously harm your vehicle. Anyway, they attempted to stage a coup against the leadership of the subdivision and then snuck in a provision that would have taxed all of the homeowners to pay for the paving of the roads exclusively near the wealthy homes. Which led to the beginning of an uprising, which ultimately led to the wealthy individuals losing their hold on the control of the board and only maintaining a fair representation of the population. Because of this, everyone ended up being involved in the process of creating long-term maintenance strategies, which ended up working out really well. I continue to believe that they ought to establish a toll or pass system that would make it possible for locals to utilize the roads, but would necessitate payments from visitors. However, due to the fact that my parents went through something similar, I do not intend to purchase a house in a neighborhood that is governed by an HOA. This takes place in South Africa, which does not truly have homeowners associations, but does have complicated management. My cousin and her best friend had recently moved into a new property, and to celebrate, they decided to hold a housewarming party for their new digs. There were a total of 10 people, but according to the contract that she signed, we weren't allowed to have the barbecue on the balcony. As a result, we relocated to the communal area where there were other briars already set up. We begin the fire, and there are approximately 5 of us in total out there. We're merely speaking with one another and not listening to any music while we wait for the fire to reach a point where we can braai and get this over with. After dark, only 2 people are permitted to be in the braai area, despite the fact that there is a whole 4x6 meter roof, 3 briars, and a giant effing lighted up pool. This insane old woman comes out and yells at my cousin, telling her that only 2 people are allowed to be in the braai area after dark. Also, the 2 persons who are there are not permitted to consume anything, not even water that's contained within a container made of plastic. Due to the fact that everyone who bought or rented a place in that building put up a rebellion, it would appear that the crazy lady no longer resides there. Why would anyone want to do that? To add insult to injury, I learned later that in order to go swimming, the water's ambient temperature must be above a specific threshold. No splashing of any kind is permitted, and you are only allowed to spend a maximum of 20 minutes each day in the pool area. I never once came across anyone else in any of the shared spaces on the property. Spent almost 10 years in a neighborhood that was regulated by an HOA. After 7 years of this, our neighbors decided to put their house up for sale, and shortly thereafter, the worst neighbors in the history of the world moved in. They moved in on a Friday, and by the following Monday, they had the daycare up and running in the basement of their new home. On Monday after that, there are 14 children brought in. The HOA sent a cease and desist letter, to which the a-holes responded by not responding. The back and forth, letters, meetings, shouting matches, threats of legal action, and other antics continue for close to a year. I was ultimately asked to go because they want me to make a statement, and I am the immediate neighbor, so they wanted me to go. I informed them that only if there was time during the new business portion of the meeting for me to speak with them. I stayed true to the facts and simply recited the HOA covenants in their entirety, chapter and verse. As a result of the fact that it is illegal to run a business outside of the house dwelling, the jerks are breaking the law every time they let their children play outside. I didn't make any comments or observations of my own. Instead, I just read over the regulations. When the time came for fresh business, I offered up some engineering plans for a 175-foot tall amateur radio tower. An analysis of the pattern of the antenna radiation, sealed engineering specifications for the tower itself, an analysis of the FCC guidelines that required reasonable accommodations for said tower, PRB1 for those who care, a soil analysis, sealed foundation specifications and prints, sealed engineering specifications for the tower itself, an analysis of the pattern of the antenna radiation, etc. were all included in the packet. If it had a spec, I made sure to include it along with the relevant engineering analysis that was performed by a person who was licensed in my state. I received the message, "There is no way in H you're putting up any kind of antenna tower in our neighborhood." To which I responded, "Oh, so you only enforce the rules when a Jewish family is involved. I see how it works here." I stood up, turned, and walked out of the room without saying another word. They immediately closed the daycare facility. Along with approximately 300 other cabins, we owned one that was located deep within the forest near Leavenworth, Washington. Roughly 100 of the cabins were occupied by permanent residents, while the remaining 200 were rented out on VRBO, vacation rental by owner. However, even the owners who rented out their cabins to us were members of the homeowners association that governed the neighborhood. Well, the permanent residents made the decision that they didn't want people renting out cabins anymore. Yeah, right, 2/3 of the cabins were rented out. So the president of the homeowners association decided to sue about 140 of the owners. He made the worst possible rep for the HOA, and as a result, he eventually got so much blackmail and crap that he up and left with his small cult of about 30 people. After a long and complicated process, they moved out, and then my parents were elected president. Thank you for listening to these stories. If you want to see new videos, be sure to subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to hit the like button.